how's everything going now that you're over in Arizona?
Yeah, good. Very exciting to be here. It's good to be around it again. Didn't get to go the last couple of years, so it's my first one since Miami, which featured the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. So yeah, looking forward to it. Very exciting to be here.
In fact, actually, seeing as we're talking on the Super Bowl, we'll go with those questions first then. So, what has been your favorite? You just mentioned Miami, and that's obviously many people's, it gets a lot of Super Bowls. But what is your favorite Super Bowl city to go to that you've managed to visit during your time covering the league?
Good question. I mean, I do like Miami for the kind of proximity. When you're working at it, it's very much about how easy it is to get around the city. And our hotel in Miami was right next to where we were working every day. Media center was 500 yards one way, the beach was 500 the other. It was sunny, beautiful. So Miami would be right up there. I think Minneapolis was really good as a different city. They really kind of embraced their weather and the bold north, as they called it. So I really like that one as well. But once you get inside these media centers, they all kind of look the same. But I certainly like Miami, Minneapolis, San Francisco is a favorite, although it was a bit more spread out there. So lots of different ones.
Do you still pinch yourself to some extent that you get to cover it? Obviously, you've been covering the league since the 80s and 90s and stuff. So do you still get to pinch yourself the fact that you get to cover it and present it for Sky Sports every year?
Yeah, I think so. When I was a kid and I'd watch the Super Bowls growing up, and I'd be excited for them. You'd try and have an afternoon nap and it wouldn't work because you're so excited. Then I'd watch the people that are presenting on British TV, and you just think about how cool it was that they were in the stadium talking about the Super Bowl, presenting it. And so for me to go from being a fan where Super Bowl Sunday was like Christmas morning to being part of that history of the people that have told the story of the Super Bowl to the UK audience, yeah, it's very special. Every Super Bowl is that way. I wake up on Super Bowl Sunday, I'm appreciative. It feels special. And I think back to the people that have done it before me, especially Kevin Cadle, who I worked with for many years. So yeah, I'm very, very privileged to be another person that's presenting it to the UK audience.
Good. So how's the Super Bowl experience changed? Sorry, let me rephrase that. Has the Super Bowl experience changed much since you've covered it? Obviously, it's getting bigger and bigger every year. Now we have these, it's been going on for a few years, but the Super Bowl opening night, which we had the other night. Now, that's just one example. How else has it changed since you've been covering?
I think it's just that media interest around it gets bigger and bigger. It gets glitzier and more glamorous. You mentioned opening night. That's a very choreographed and staged thing now. Which has become an event in its own right, with journalists dressed in fancy dress interviewing other journalists about how amusing and funny they are. So it is a real week-long event now. When you've got the player availabilities, all of those kind of things make a big difference to building up the week. It's always, I think it's always been quite the spectacle. I think they just have made it even more so over the last few years.
Have we lost you, Matthew? There you are.
I'm still here.
Sorry. Yeah, we got you.
Did you get the question?
I answered your one about the Super Bowl, how it's changed. Was there another one?
Okay, yeah. So, what's been your favorite story covering the NFL or covering the Super Bowl? We know, crazy story. Keep it clean if you have to, or no, however you feel like. However you feel like.
So I think just in recent years, the kind of story of Nick Foles, how he went from being a career back. He had a brief spell as a starter, then there was a journeyman quarterback. Suddenly thrust into the starting lineup, and he takes down Tom Brady. That doesn't get much bigger and better than that. But I think over the years, telling the Tom Brady story at the Super Bowl has been a big thing. I've seen him win multiple Super Bowls. I've seen him lose a couple where he was the best player on the field. Do you think about Brady in our lifetime going to 10 Super Bowls, winning 7 of them, to have been there when he's won those games, to have seen how much he puts in when he lost them. It's those kind of, Brady's kind of the longer story that I would say over the years I've been covering Super Bowls. But then it's all about the moments, the Philly special, the Malcolm Butler interception. I mean, you can go on with all these different ways Super Bowls stick in your mind. And the thing is, every year going into a Super Bowl, you could have like 50 storylines. I mean, literally, this is a great Super Bowl for stories, and you never know who's going to be the hero. That's the thing. It could be anyone. Literally could be anyone. Malcolm Butler was an undrafted free agent cornerback who no one had heard of really until he pounced and intercepted Russell Wilson. Changed his life, wrote his name into Super Bowl history. That's how quickly things can change, and you can be elevated in a Super Bowl.
That he did. And obviously you talk about Super Bowl memories. Do you think that there's ever going to be a chance for Super Bowl memories to be made in London? So do you think there will ever be a Super Bowl in London, if 5 years' time, 15 years' time, 20 years' time?
So I asked this question once of the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs, Clark Hunt, and I thought he was going to shoot it down straight away. And he said, we're all options are on the table internationally. I think it's been well documented that I'm a big supporter of a London franchise and of international growth, and I think we should have a team in London. We should have multiple teams in London. We should have teams in Germany. I think we could support a European division. We should have the draft. We should have some teams NFL training camp. The Jags should come and do training camp in the UK. We're not getting a Super Bowl. We're not getting a Super Bowl. It's the ultimate American experience. For a start, it has always kicked off at the time it does, 6:25 Eastern or whatever. That's 11:30 on a Sunday night in London. So it's sadly not going to happen, but we can make do with a lot of other good things that we have our way.
Yeah, I think if you give us everything but the Super Bowl, I think a lot of British fans will be okay. We'll be okay with that.
We'll have one of those once they start doing these neutral site conference championship games. We'll have one of them.
Yes, exactly. Now let's move on to the season that we've just had, and some of it is also talking about what's going on in the future. Where do you think, this is your personal opinion, obviously you may have inside details, but in your personal opinion, where do you think Aaron Rodgers is going to end up in 2023? With the Packers, with another team, or on the beach with Cliff Kingsbury?
I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he'll retire. I think he will. I think he'll continue to. I think he'll continue to play, and I'm just not quite sure where he's going to play. If I'm honest, I think. Part of me just feels like he's going to go back to Green Bay. I feel like he's still going to go back to the Green Bay Packers. I feel like, it's a great story for us to say Aaron Rodgers might go here or there. We don't realize that emotional pull that is, kind of tugging at his heartstrings. So I think I would like to see him go to one of two places. I don't think the Raiders will do what he wants, which is deliver a Super Bowl. I think he should go to San Francisco. He's kind of ruled that out already. I think he should go to Miami. I think he should go to Miami with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and all those weapons.
I was going to say,
get them over the hump.
Is that your personal bias kicking in there by any chance?
No, I love all 32 teams equally.
Really?
I just think if you think about what's best for Rodgers, he needs weapons. He needs to be the last piece in the puzzle. I'm not sure he would be with the Raiders.
Yeah. You mentioned the 49ers there just as an option. Obviously, I don't think the 49ers are in there. But what do you think the 49ers should be looking to do in 2023 at quarterback? There's a bunch of options. Some of it is going to depend on Brock Purdy's health and everything. But all players being equal and all players being back, what do you think should be there? Who do you think should be their starter in 2023?
So, I think they should be looking at if they had any sense, they'd be looking at Aaron Rodgers. But I think they've got so much invested in Trey Lance, right? I mean, Purdy's injury is going to really make a difference. So
Yeah.
at best that's 6 months. You know, and at 6 months you're looking at August. The reality is it's probably worse than that in terms of the time frame. So that kind of rules him out. They've got so much invested in Trey Lance, but they haven't been able to really know who he is. And when he has played, he's been very up and down, very hot and cold.
Yeah.
I think the answer's in behind door number 3, whatever that is, because I don't think it necessarily is Trey Lance. I don't think they'll keep Jimmy Garoppolo. I think it's amazing because they're such a good team, and that they just need to answer that position. Yeah. And even if it's in the short term, then they're right back in the Super Bowl conversation next season.
Yeah, it's odd that
I'm still lobbying for Rodgers. I'm Rodgers to San Francisco. That's what I think.
Okay, let's go for it that way. We mentioned about Rodgers possibly retiring. One quarterback who obviously did retire for good, in quotation marks, because we know what he's been like in the past, has been Tom Brady. Are you surprised that Brady called it a day, especially after the season they had and the incredibly disappointing regular season and the disappointing ending that he had? Or did you think that he would possibly give it another go and try to end on a higher note?
I think he probably has realised that hitting those high notes is going to get harder and harder as each year passes. You know, very few go out calling their own shot. Peyton Manning was one, Ray Lewis another, John Elway, but it doesn't happen that way very often. So I think Tom has realised that his run was something we'll never see again. It has to come to an end at some point, and I think he probably missed that window to go out as a champion. He didn't want to leave then. He wasn't ready to leave then. And I think this was the right move. I think it was the right time. I feel like he can look back and say, well, I've still got my team to the playoffs in my final 2 years in the NFL. Second to last game in the regular season, he's thrown for over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns against Carolina to win the division. The year before, he's leading a furious comeback against the Rams, only for a late touchdown to go the other way. So, I still believe Brady went out on top. And, it doesn't matter that he didn't go out as a champion. We're never going to see someone like him again. It was incredible.
No, we won't. I think that's a pretty good way. As you say, he was still at the top of his game, but just pieces around him or whatever just couldn't make it work. Another quarterback who's got another uncertain bit of future is Lamar Jackson. There's been talks about him and his contract situation over the past couple of days. Do you think that A, he will return to the Ravens this season, and B, do you think he'll be so on a big deal, or do you think it will just be franchise tag and kick it down the road?
So I think he will return, and I think it will because of the nature of that position, and you don't always want to be left without a quarterback. I think he gets that big deal, and I think that might be a mistake on Baltimore's part to maybe overpay because he's a sensational weapon. He changes games, he takes over games, but he's not the complete article as a passer. Now, you view him differently. You don't view him that way he doesn't have to be a perfect passer because he does so much more for you. But inconsistency is a thing. That was a case this year. He burst out the gates. First 4 weeks was excellent. Tailed off, and then injuries. Injuries have been a factor for injuries and illness have been a factor for Lamar Jackson. The last few seasons. So I think they are going to be painted into a corner where they have to pay him and they have to pay him handsomely. But I just think that's going to lead to it being looked at as a very generous contract, and maybe they've overpaid for him. I feel like they don't want to find out what life without Lamar is like, because you never know when you're going to get your next quarterback. And so I think they're going to want to see him stay with them, but to do that they're going to have to pay him.
Okay, but you just said that you don't know what it want to be like. Life is like without a quarterback. And as a Steelers fan, I kind of have to get one question in. Do you think the Steelers have found their franchise quarterback in Kenny Pickett, or do you think it's still too early to tell?
No, well, I mean, let's let it play out. We've seen other quarterbacks that have had a good first year, not so good second year. But I liked what he did down the stretch. I think he grew as the season went on, and it wasn't just numerically, it wasn't just with the numbers. It was leading some late touchdown drives. We saw that against the Raiders. We saw it, a few times when they needed it, and they were unlucky to miss out on the playoffs in the end. And Kenny Pickett was a big reason for them getting on that winning streak down the stretch. So, yeah, I do think if they're not, if we're not sure if they've actually 100% found their guy, I'm certainly watching him with interest because I feel like he's on the right path, and they'll feel good about that selection as they go into the off season.
Yeah, a lot of Steelers fans I know certainly feel good. As I say, the second half of the season, he really did kick on. He took his lumps, but after the bye week, he had a chance to work with the first teamers. He, as I say, kicked on, and things are looking good. Just need to bring it back to this Sunday now, and obviously it's the Super Bowl. Maurice Jones-Drew's had an interesting comment this past week about Patrick Mahomes and his legacy. That if he were to win this Sunday, you can crown him as the GOAT, as the greatest of all time. Obviously, Tom Brady might have something to say with that. I think that might be a bit too far. But what do you think a win would do for Patrick Mahomes' legacy?
So I was thinking about this because Mahomes hasn't played well in 2 Super Bowls, with the exception of the fourth quarter against San Francisco when he delivered 21 points in 6 minutes to steal that game away. So it's on his mind. I spoke to Mahomes yesterday, and he said that I've won one now, I've lost one. It's a motivating factor. But he also said that it's too early in his career for this to define his legacy, and I agree.
Yeah.
Even if he loses this one, it doesn't define his legacy. He is a great player, and I think it's a strong word to use when he's only had 5 seasons as a starter, but he is a great player. That's his legacy. Whether he picks up this second one this weekend or whether he loses this weekend, it doesn't change it for me. He's still the best quarterback in the NFL today. He's he's a true superstar. He's a great player. And look, I do think if you're going to talk down the road and put him in the conversation with Brady, got to stack some wins at some point. Absolutely. And you don't necessarily have to, because you might play a different way. You might be more prolific in your passing yardage. You don't have to win 7 like Brady did. Joe Montana's one of the greatest we've ever seen. He won 4.
Yep.
Yeah, but so Mahomes is going to have to stack some wins. But I don't think his legacy gets defined on Sunday.
Okay, perfect. I'll keep it to 2 more questions because I see we've got time.
All right, yeah.
Would you say that we have the 2 best teams playing this Sunday? Because obviously, who you see as the best teams has sort of fluctuated over the season. Many people had the Bills. I personally think, were it not for Brock Purdy's injury, I think the San Francisco 49ers would have made it here, and I could make the argument that they were the best team over the course of the season. But would you say that with the Chiefs and the Eagles, we have the 2 best teams playing this weekend?
I do think we've got the 2 best teams in the NFL. We've got the two top seeds. They both won 16 and lost 3 to get to this point. That's not easy to do. To win that many games in the NFL. Now, I think there was an upper echelon when you look at the teams in the league. You can put the Bengals, you can put the Bills, and you can put the 49ers in that top group. But here we are with 2 teams that are loaded with talent. If you think about how complete they are, the Chiefs, we think about their passing attack, right? Mahomes and Kelsey, and now the receivers are coming on. And then Isaiah Pacheco's been one of the best running backs for the second half of the season. You look at the Eagles, and they can run all over you. But then Jalen Hurts has got a 1,500-yard receiver in A.J. Brown, a 1,000-yard receiver in Devontae Smith. You got Chris Jones on the defense for the Chiefs. You got this pass rush of the Eagles. So everywhere you look, there's elite players, and I think that makes these teams the best in the NFL. The number 1 seed. We haven't had 2 number 1 seeds go up against each other since 2017. So yeah, I feel like we've got a kind of classic matchup on our hands, and one that because because of the fact, like the Eagles are favourites, but only slightly favourites. But then you've got the Patrick Mahomes factor, right? So yeah, Mahomes can turn a game on its head. So I genuinely don't know which way this game's going to go as we head towards the weekend.
Oh, you say that. That's sort of perfectly.
I'll have a go though if you want to ask me.
So this final question is going to be a two-parter. Where do you see the game being won and lost, and what is your score prediction?
All right, so the game's going to get, like most Eagles games this year, the game is going to get decided in the trenches. So I think Philadelphia will have one of those days. I've been at quite a few Super Bowls where there's been a top-ranked offense like the Chiefs are this year and a strong defense, and so often the defense comes out on top. Now, I don't think Patrick Mahomes will be shut down completely. He's too good for that. I think Mahomes is going to have his moments of magic. Chiefs are going to score their points. But I can also see elements of when Mahomes was running for his life against Tampa Bay in his last Super Bowl outing. I think there's so much pressure that's going to come from this Eagles pass rush that's going to prove to be decisive. And not in a blowout kind of way. I think it'll just be enough to tip the scales in the favor of the Eagles. So I'm saying Philadelphia win 27-24. And in order to do that, they would have had a good display on their defensive line, and they'd have got a lot of pressure on Mahomes.
Perfect. I think that's everything as I said. We'll